Okay, I think we're live. People can let me know in the comments, I guess, if we are live or not. So I think I have the camera working today, guys. I also have audio should be working. Scoot this just a little bit differently. So I'm just going to kick off here with some of the topics and things I've talked about and what we want to kind of get going on. So some of the big things. So let's just start off with here a big shout out to everybody who's joined. Looks like we have 9 people, so congratulations on that. But a big thank you to everybody, not just in the Americas, so North America, South America, as well as all of Europe, but also in Africa and the Middle East, right? So we do have a growing subscribership and viewership all over Africa as well as all over the Middle East. So a big shout out to you guys. The whole purpose of doing this live stream in the morning is that we did the last one in the evening. So I'm trying to capture the evening ones are capturing like India and China and other parts of Asia. And then this one's supposed to be capturing more of like the Americas as well as Europe. So I know everyone's on different time zones. And it's hard to get everybody at the most optimal, like perfect timing. But this is the best we can do. So we'll see. I might do a few other ones. Maybe we'll shift the timing around if you guys want something different. One of the big things, though, that we're going to be kind of shifting from is the last live stream went terrible because the video didn't work. So the audio worked. The video was, me stuck, bent over. So anyways, shout out to Portugal as well. Looks like they're on there. And India's on. So people are making it at all hours of the day and night. But I don't want these to be just Q&As where it's like somebody asks a quick question and says, hey, Dimitri, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I give you like a quick response. I'm hoping to have more of like a coffee chat style, review here. So kind of like if you were to go get coffee with me. And yes, I do occasionally get coffee with students, for example, in the local Dallas area. Again, not during COVID, obviously, but you can get like a cool mug like this one. This is the Talking Tuesday Fancy Quant mug. I'm drinking coffee from Sweden today. So we're going to have some coffee here as well. These are going to be more like coffee chats instead of just strict Q&As. But let's talk about what everybody's wanting to talk about, what everybody's wanting to hear. Wow, Sri Lanka's here as well. And we'll talk about coffee in a second. But let's talk about what everyone's really here for, which I think is what most of you came for. And that's going to be discussing the Dimitri Bianco Fancy Quant honorable mentions list for financial engineering programs. So I'm going to be doing a list. I don't know exactly what's going to be on the list at this point. The reason for this is shout out to Romania, Germany, Singapore. But yeah, so I don't know what's going to be on the list yet because, as I've mentioned, I don't like the current ranking systems. I think they're far too easy to game and to cheat. And so I don't like the rankings. There are schools on there that I would deem as non-quant schools. So yes, everybody has a different opinion, defining quant, different goals. So I think it's good to have different programs. But at the end of the day, right, I kind of have my branding. Shout out to Boston. I have my own branding here, and what I think is best, what I think is most valued by employers, especially in my area of risk management, is what's going to be really the focus here of kind of the honorable mentions here. I also think the rankings have done a absolute terrible job at including schools globally. So I give some respect here, and I apologize if you hear a baby screaming in the background. That's my kid. She's getting ready to leave, though, shortly. But I don't like that. I mean, I understand the ranking systems because, I saw a stat somewhere like last year, the year before, that was like 70% of all quantitative finance jobs are in the US. So that being said, it makes complete sense that, right, they're going to be ranking more programs in the US because the majority of students that are going to be placed are going to be placed in the US. A lot of students, so I'll make this clear, most quants in the US are actually foreign. So they're not American citizens. They're not born here. Most quants actually come from Asia, for example, so China and India. They will all come here though for graduate school, get an advanced degree, and then find a job through that process. So somebody else has asked, I'm going to go through the questions here from the video post before and kind of tie them into this discussion. Somebody asked, basically, how likely is it to be able to transfer into the US? And the answer to that is like slim to none. The reason for this is that since the United States has so many jobs, we also have so many students here locally. And then also we are attracting all of that top talent, right? The best and the brightest from all these countries globally. So for example, I went to school with people from, China, India, Japan, Greece, France, Mexico. I know I'm missing a few other ones. Thailand, I think, for example. So the U.S. is pulling talent from everywhere to come here to get an education. And so we have this massive pool of students we can choose from. And it's expensive to interview and to consider people from abroad. And again, we don't really, like, for example, I don't know the international universities. So I don't know if it's like the top rated in, let's say, I don't know, Italy, or if it's like the worst rated in Italy or in Europe or whatever. And so for me, it's like right? It just, companies are going to be hiring locally. So typically, wherever you want to work as a quant, you need to go and get an education from that area. Europe might be slightly different in the fact that you can easily transfer between them. So I always view Europe somewhat like the United States, where you have a grouping of, Europe's a grouping of countries, we have a grouping of different states, but it's not hard to transfer a lot of times between there. But that being said, again, the majority of jobs in the United States, which is why a lot of people come to the United States. Somebody else asked, this is going to be kind of a hot topic, if I can find it here, on the UK's programs. Let's see here. Give me a sec, guys. Okay, so somebody put here, Sambeat, I think that's how you pronounce it. They said, it would be great that you will be talking about the programs. On that note, as you've mentioned that you prefer a 2 years full-time program, I'd love to hear what you think about the 1 year stats, math, etc. masters of, say, Imperial, London School of Economics, and other such universities. So I'm going to stand by what I've stated, that 2 years is best. I mean, obviously, the more time you can spend learning, the better. But of course, there is a real world trade-off of how much time do you want to spend learning versus actually making money, right? You still have to pay for a school and an education, and we all want to kind of get going with our lives and be making money and building careers. But again, as I mentioned, the locality piece is going to be the big factor here. So I don't think that UK schools or European schools are necessarily worse. It's just that they're going to be placing students in their market. So if you're going to these top rated schools, for example, in the UK, you're going to be competing with people from the UK. And so you're not going to have any necessarily disadvantage. It's not like you're going to be behind. Academically though, right, you have an entire year less than a 2 year program, or say a year and a half program, you have a half year less, you're going to learn less material. I mean, it's just kind of common sense. And that's why a lot of times PhDs are preferred, especially in the US, because the US, a PhD should take between 5 and 7 years. So again, more education typically means you know more. But again, their degree types kind of fall into that as well. Some programs are starting to prefer master's programs because a lot of times they're more specialized. Other companies prefer PhDs just because you have more education, more background, more research experience in kind of that area. Let's see. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm going to give a shout out though too, because somebody actually mentioned this, and I think this was kind of surprising. I don't see the exact comment here, but they asked if I would be reviewing Delft University of Technology, which is in the Netherlands. So kind of a shocking lineup here. I'm actually going to be reviewing a textbook here. This textbook is Mathematical Modeling and Computational Finance. One of the authors actually reached out to me and asked if I would review the book. For those of you that don't know, I turn down tons and tons of books that authors and publishers send to me because they're just not worth my time to read. Again, this book I'm hoping will be really good, so I'm excited. I did ask them for additional information on their program, so they might be getting reviewed, but not necessarily. And I just want to emphasize here too that when the list ends up coming out, which it'll probably be, I don't know, this fall, because it'll take me so much time to review programs, I'm not reviewing every program out there, right? There's no possible way for me to do that. Right? Even in the US, there's a ton of programs. And then if you want to do, for example, Europe, then it adds a ton more programs. And I'm going to be trying to look globally. So I'm trying to look at maybe South America a little bit. I'm trying to look perhaps in the Middle East, different parts of Asia, in Africa if they have anything, and trying to get kind of a full review of what's going on globally. So we're trying to get that, global perspective here, guys. I want to give you something that's different. Again, the list, I'm guessing, will start off with a fairly small list, and then it will hopefully expand over time as I have more time, more information, and perhaps if the list is fairly successful. So yes, this financially impacts these educational institutions, because if I come out there and say, Dimitri Bianco University is the best university, or it's an honorable mention, what ends up happening is that a lot of these programs will have more applications. So more applications means more money. You think about it, typically costs about $100 to apply to a program. You have 1,000 applications, so you can do the math here, right? $100,000. So it's financially impactful for the universities to get more applications. So it's a good thing if I state it. But that being said, I can't do all of them. So eventually I might add more and more to the list and try to streamline it a little bit more, maybe have an application fee for programs that want to be reviewed. But as of now, it's just going to be me sending out like a specific invite to, I think your university could be good. Please provide this information. And then they have the opportunity to either apply, give me that information or not give me the information. If they don't, right, they're not going to make the list. So anyways, that's going to be what's happening here with the rankings and everything. So I'm kind of excited about that. Let's look at a few questions here and see if anyone else has questions as we shift gears to maybe a different topic. Okay, I think this is a good question here. I'm going to ask, I'll kind of switch gears and talk about this. It says, Dimitri, how frequently do you read research papers published recently about your interests? Do you think this adds value to a career? Yes, I'm not going to say no. It does add value, and I do read new research papers. But I think when you have a problem, a lot of times you need to go back to the core fundamental papers here. So, for example, when you go to time series, right? This is what I talk about. This is what I like to research. This is what, this is my hobby, my passion. Anyways, data science is kind of coming up on the scenes for this, but I love time series. When I go back to time series and I start thinking about concepts, like I talk a lot about stationarity, right? Where do you go for these papers? You should always start, I think, at the base level. So start with like Engel Granger, start with Dickey Fuller, right? These are the fundamental foundational papers here on time series, getting those basics. And then I start referencing these papers against textbooks and trying to cross, check, because not surprisingly, nowadays there are a lot of books out there, not necessarily textbooks. A lot of the, I'm going to put air quotes around them, but a lot of the industry practitioner books are wrong. They have incorrect information in them. They're misleading. Again, they're not peer reviewed. This leads me to the publisher issue here. So I've started blacklisting publishers I will not review books for anymore, just because there's so many bad books under one publisher, and it's clear they don't do all the editing and processing. So yes, a big shout out to Springer. So if you don't know, I don't have a book with me right now, but Springer, if you buy almost any of their books, they have very good quality. They've done an amazing job. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I do love Springer. Their books are a little more expensive in general, but I get it. They're good quality academic books here. But that being said, after you get the foundation, the fundamentals, you start laying that. Then when you start reading newer academic research, which I do read when I'm researching a problem, I will actually go to all the references. So it's important to read the paper, think about it, analyze it, and think, this doesn't make sense, or this doesn't as clear. Or sometimes they do some hand waving and say, see this paper, and then they just move on. Go and find those references, look at those other papers. Again, it's kind of like a pyramid a lot of times when you have a paper, because you're going to start off with all those base papers. So you should have, 10, 20 papers all supporting your idea. And then it should stack on top of each other and build to your idea a lot of times. And so, yeah, new research is awesome. It's great. Again, for data science and machine learning, there's a ton of research out there. A lot of it is complete nonsense. But again, you do need to look at what's coming out, what's new, what's exciting, and then see if they are referencing other papers. If they're just like making things up and, I don't know, throwing charts on a paper and saying, oh, look at this chart, it's amazing, I've solved the world, don't buy it. But new research is exciting. There are some good sources out there, but be very careful because there's also a lot of nonsense and kind of fake how to get famous and popular by publishing as many papers as possible. And yet a lot of these are complete garbage. So that's something else to consider here. Let's see some other questions. Let's say, okay, so Daniel is asking here, let's say you develop a trading algorithm as an employee, then you leave the company and build your own algorithm. Will there be any problems with your previous company? Oh man, that's a challenging question. It depends. So depending on the firm, depending how high you are, depending on basically your access or clearance to different types of information. Some companies you'll be so small it won't matter. They don't really care because you're not going to know all the information behind their trading algorithms. That being said, if you work at larger companies and you're higher up, for example, there are a lot of times non-competes for so many years after you leave. So, I mean, imagine, I don't know, you're an MD, so managing director at a big fund, and you know them inside and out. They might have a non-compete. So that's something else. The other piece of algorithms, though, is algorithms are very, how to put this? They don't last, they have a short lifespan. So models and algorithms will expand you can use them and build them and they work quite well. And again, they will stop working because markets are so dynamic and so fluid, and it will continue to shift and change. So you're constantly building new models. So even if you had a specific model, that's great, that's awesome. You're going to learn skills at these firms. But I can tell you, I've reviewed work and materials from people at some of the largest, most well-known, prestigious hedge funds, and they've published complete garbage. So be very careful. Just because you work at a fund doesn't mean you're super smart. I'm not going to go too much into that. There was somebody made some statement or comment about, I won't say which firm, but they had this magical algorithm and it priced everything, and they were just geniuses and they're so smart and like it did everything. I don't buy it for 1 minute. If you have a math background, you should, in a stats background specifically, you should be able to see through the nonsense and realize like a model is going to fail within a short period of time typically. Again, depending on how your model's built, the granularity of data and those type of topics. But again, knowing an algorithm doesn't necessarily give you an edge. Again, these big firms, the reason they have so much leverage a lot of times is they have all these smart people. And again, they have specialized individuals. So they have a guy that's computer programming, so doing computer science and optimizing the implementation of the models. They have traders that can read the markets fairly well and know how to use the tools. And then, of course, behind that, you have quants that are actually building strategies, doing the research, and you have a team of quants, right? You don't just research one idea and then come up with a model. A lot of times you hit dead ends. So again, not necessarily an advantage of working somewhere. Let's see. Andre, I know Andre thinks I pronounce his name differently, Pink from America, and I'm sure you pronounce it differently in Italy. Andre asks, do you think data science and machine learning methods like decision trees and neural networks will overcome traditional statistical models? The short answer is no. I mean, it's cool, and they have applications, and there's some areas that we're seeing in the finance industry where they do perform very well. But it's just another tool that will solve a different set of problems, most typically. So again, I have a podcast coming out. I would love it to come out on Tuesday, but it's going to come out later. I did an interview with a guy, I won't spoil too much of it, who actually wrote his PhD dissertation, I believe, like in the 90s on neural networks. And anyways, so he did this dissertation. He has a lot of insight between it. I've been having discussions with him as well. I'm super interested in this. We do see some good areas for machine learning and data science, but finance, I think, is putting a lot of these regulatory conditions in place and making sure that we're using it responsibly and it's not just, free running with craziness. I see this a lot in textbooks or just industry practitioners' books. I'm not happy with the data science and machine learning community, so I can tell you that. I think a lot of them are doing things very irresponsible. And I think that comes from this perspective. There's too many people that aren't qualified to be talking on all these online forums and pages. But yet, when I go and I start reading materials from industry experts in machine learning, like at Google and Microsoft and other places, they have the similar concern. So I'm not super crazy or out there. And Google and Microsoft and Facebook and all these other companies are doing amazing research. And I think they will have a big impact on finance. But I don't see it necessarily ever taking over traditional stat models. It's just so fundamental, and stats is so baked into the underlying ideas and concepts of data science that I just can't see it taking over. Again, it's going to have a big impact, so don't get me wrong. There's going to be an area for that. So Torges asks, even though you recommended 2-year programs, most of the top programs from QuantNet and RiskNet usually only last 2 to 3 semesters. Any thoughts or opinions on that? Okay, we'll go back to this for a little bit. So yeah, so the video that I made, I'm hoping a lot of you realize, was what I think the dream perfect MFE would look like. As you've pointed out, though, a lot of them are shifting away from that. They're shifting to like 1 year, 1.5 year. Hold on, give me a sec. But in general, I'm not happy with those programs. I think the universities, the schools, at least some of them, not all of them, but there are some of them that are too much driven by profits. So basically, the faster they can get you through, the more exciting it is. Like, oh, I could be a quant in 1, 2 semesters, 3 semesters, whatever. I think they're kind of shortchanging a lot of students for that. Part of my goal of doing the honorable mentions as well as to tie into this is I want to show that there are a lot of really solid, good, rigorous programs available, but they are so focused on doing the academic side of it. Like, they want to have really good statistics. They want to have really good mathematics. They want to have really robust research and dive in deeply. But these programs are not necessarily accepted or supported by the industry just because the industry is looking for, big flashy names. And I think the way that the current rankings are done, they've kind of pushed to the top a lot of programs that should not be pushed to the top. And I don't think the rankings are filtering out nonsensical programs. So, I mean, as of now, right, you're not going to have much of an option to go for the 2-year program if you go for an MFE. Again, I do recommend students consider, for example, a master's in statistics. So a lot of really top-rated statistics masters. Again, globally, Europe has some amazing programs as well, in South America as well. Those programs a lot of times are going to be 2 years. So I would think about it. Like, it's not necessarily you have to go to a 2-year program, but the more time you study, the more time you're going to really get concepts deeper. Once you hit the industry running, you're not going to have time to like sit and study. Like, I was really lucky in my first job because the way the position was structured is I had some downtime and I just used it to like read and study and, try to catch up on my schooling because I just came out of school. But as I've got going through my career, you get busier and busier and you just don't have the time to sit and focus and read a material. You also don't have the opportunity to sit and think. So I think that's something a lot of students miss. You can read something, but you need to think about it like long term. So a lot of times I can read something and I get what it's saying super simply, but trying to think about it deeper and connecting that concept and that idea to all these other concepts and ideas is going to be kind of the key point here. How do you think things through? How do you connect the ideas? If you can connect different concepts across, so for stats and math and finance, you can come up with really unique solutions. So again, 2 years is optimal. I'm not happy with the way that the ranking systems are pushing these 1 year, 1.5 year programs. I would like to kind of show you guys there are better programs out there that aren't well rated on these platforms. And so these platforms, again, are driving a lot of profit to these universities. I don't have anything against the universities. I just don't think the ones that are being pushed and marketed and branded the biggest and the best and the loudest are the best programs. And so I'm hoping to kind of show you guys there are some, I'm going to call them sleeper schools, right? Those ones that you see them, but they don't look like they're that great. But when you actually look at the material and the rigor, they're stellar schools. They might not have the best job placement. But I'm also hoping this will help push some of these into the popularity stream here. And so more and more people will actually consider going to these schools, which then again will result in more industry expectation. Industry will start working with them, and then they'll become better and better and better. So that's just kind of my take on the tier thing. Yes, it's hard to find, like my program does not exist. So please don't think that there is like a school I'm mentioning. There's no perfect school with a 2-year master's that has all the courses I would teach. Um, so anyways, quick one here. Arkansas asks, have you ever met French quants? Love from Paris. Yes, I actually went to school with a French quant. He went on, I think, to do some quant work. Anyways, and then there are specific schools, I think Columbia is one of them, that typically hires quite a few French students. So there are quite a few French quants here and there. Again, you kind of get washed out in the US because there's so many quants that come from Asia. But yeah, you do come across quants from France as well. And I'm going to talk about here, so I'm going to stop answering questions for just a second, and then I'll answer a few more. I have mentioned I am thinking about doing a Udemy course, and by thinking about, I mean I'm working on it, but I don't know how long it's going to take to put together. So it takes me a lot of time. I have the issue of, right, Udemy is going to be based off of well-ranking courses, and the more people that like my course, the more people that take the course, all right, you get paid more. I also want it to be valuable though. So how do you make it rigorous and exciting and something new? So I'm going to try to start at like a base level of you have no understanding. So this is going to be great for like business students, for example, so finance students. This will also be great for those doing math and stats, but at an undergrad level. So we're going to start at the very basics. Again, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks. I'm going to try to make them, though, useful and unique in the sense that even if you have, an undergrad already and you're working on a master's, that you will actually learn some new materials and tidbits here and there. So I work in model validation. I've worked in internal audit. I've worked in model development. I know and see all the consistent problems that happen in the industry that people make. So it won't necessarily be part of the first class that I make on Udemy, but I'm going to eventually make a class on that of, simple, easy things that people miss, things to look for, additional testing that you should do, but I just don't see people doing on development or even validation teams. So the Udemy piece could be coming. I don't know when it's going to come out, how long it's going to take me to put together. Guys, I'm just deviating like crazy and mad everywhere. So I start on one topic and I kind of lay out a base foundation, and then I get really excited and I'm like going off on other topics. And, I want to include some machine learning and data science in there with actual applications and some actual testing. And then I actually want to do, the basics. So we're getting into like, different types of methodologies for checking normality and different assumptions behind models, but then trying to, bring that down to a level that everybody understands and is excited about. So anyways, the Udemy course could be coming. Again, it takes me a long, long time because I'm trying to make it unique and dynamic in the sense that it will jump around from topic to topic as well. So I don't want to just bore you and like sit here and chat. I want to have me chatting. I want to have me doing some handwritten mathematics and kind of walking through some problems with you, so you kind of get the idea of how you connect your academic studies to the real world. And then also I want to do some programming and coding. So kind of like a real quant. Like you're going to have to do a bunch of variety of topics all in one course, but learn a bunch. So anyways, that's what I'm kind of thinking about. Somebody else is asking here. So Artemy, I think it's an I. Sorry, I'm hard to see here. What position do you hope to achieve in the future? Would you like to become a CRO, head of risk at a bank? What investments does one have to make throughout career to end up in this role? So this is a really good question. And I think a lot of you are probably wondering similar things here. So what this is, guys, this is a conundrum for me, even in my own career here. Now, I started off wanting to be an executive, like I said, so CEO, chief risk officer, CRO, something like that. And the reason I wanted to do that is not because of the money, which is what a lot of people want. I don't like the way the industry is doing things in many aspects. And there are some top performing banks and hedge funds that are doing things the right way. But I would love to go into like a broken firm and then actually fix them and bring them up to better standards. I would love to be kind of someone who's teaching. So the back of my mind, I'm playing with this idea of, should I try to get like a professor position? Like I don't care about tenure. I don't want to necessarily be a full-time professor, but it'd be nice to be able to teach and educate and bring people up to standards and teach them things that just aren't being taught in academia and even in the industry. So bringing in that expertise from a practitioner's perspective, but also someone who's gone through, a graduate program. but being in a position where you can actually impact a firm from internally. So I've wanted to do that executive role. The more I get into my career, you start to play more politics. There's more nonsense. There's more games going on. I'm not going to get into too much on why this occurs, but it occurs. And so the higher up you get, you have to deal with more of this kind of nonsense. And again, I stick to my guns here. I stick to my morals and standards of you need to be a good person. You need to help people. You need to explain things to people. And as a quant, right, a lot of times when quants get higher up, they kind of just throw off their quantness and just like dive into the soft, fun, frilly things and going to meetings. I think you need to keep that intact and actually add value back to the business. So I'm kind of tied up here. Like I would like to be a CRO, but it would have to be a meaningful position, meaning that I could impact and change the way banks are doing things. So again, my goal is kind of have a big impact industry-wide. How I do that, I do not know. Maybe I will, go up through the ranks and do that. Maybe I will teach in the long term, part-time, and kind of help give back in that way. Of course, I'm continuing to do YouTube because it's a way to give back. So I don't know. I think being an executive would be great, but dealing with a lot of the politics, dealing with a lot of the nonsense, I don't know. There's a price to pay a lot of times with that. And again, it depends who you work for. So if you have supporting people around you, you can make a really big impact. You could also be, a CRO and have no support from anyone around you or any departments and basically make no impact. So it's challenging. Something for you guys to think about as well, right? The higher you climb in these ranks, you start kind of losing your quantiness or your ties to the quant world as you're doing less analytics and more management. So something to think about. What investments does one have to make throughout a career to end up in this role? Oh man, that's an excellent question. You have to give up almost everything. So that I think is one of the most challenging pieces that people don't fully understand here. So I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan as well, and he talks a lot about this in a lot of his speeches. But when you go towards the executive role here, you're working longer and longer and longer hours. Again, you have more constraints on your time. You have to take care of all these issues. You start taking on more and more responsibility as well for the firm. So people have, I don't know if you guys know this, but as an executive, you take on legal responsibility in many ways. Again, you do have the corporation shell that helps protect you, but you do have to do things the right way. You do have some liabilities as well. You do have to get insurance a lot of times to help prevent you from being sued. But it takes a lot. I mean, even now, so even in my position I'm currently in and running YouTube and doing all these other speaking events and trying to be more active in the community, my time is like next to none. I hardly get any time with family. So I have my daughter's almost 8 months old now. Anyways, she's amazing. We've been working from home, so I get to spend a lot of time with her. If we end up going back to the office full time, I won't see her that much. I'll be working extensive hours. Again, I don't see my wife a lot of times because I'm just like holed up in my office here, editing videos, shooting videos, and then I've got, all my work stuff I'm working on and trying to do a bunch of things. So you give up a lot, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. So a lot of relationships burn out. So if you have a spouse or, a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever, a lot of times you might not necessarily make it through on that path because you're just working so many hours and you're so tied up in your career and your efforts here. It takes a lot to get to the top. It's not as if there is some good old boys club nonsensical mentalities, which I don't like, but there's also a lot of work and building relationships to get to that point. And so you give up a lot. It's just, it's hard to explain it to someone until you've really been there when it's like you're working weekends, you're working during the week. Do you really want to live a life like that? And a lot of people say, I'm going to do that and make, millions of dollars. I'm going to do it for a few years. I'm going to quit. Trust me, the amount of effort it takes to get there, by the time you get there, you're not just going to roll over and quit and give it all up. So it's really challenging, I think, career-wise to even decide where you're going to stop. What are you going to do? I'd like to point out too here from the banking side, if you look at a lot of top quants, they'll go and work for these big banks and build the experience and the relationship and everything. And then a lot of them end up going out and doing their own thing. Okay. So they're not going to go into that executive role. They're actually quitting and starting their own fund, their own firms. I think a lot of it comes down to this political nonsense. A lot of times quants don't like to deal with that. We're not super people pleasers and people person type of people. And because of that, I think a lot of us think, you know what, just going to do my own thing. Like they've already made so much money to that point, they can take a risk of starting a business. Again, it takes up a lot of time to do a business, but you can kind of shift your hours around a little here, a little there. So again, if you build a good reputation, right, you're going to make a lot more contacts and you can draw in more funds for investing. So doing your own firm is an option. But yeah, it's tough to, you guys, it's really tough to build a career. No matter if you have the most, I don't know, stellar degree in education, the most stellar people skills, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort just to get to that point. So anyways, I've talked about that for quite a bit. Somebody asked here also, Daniel asked, are you allowed to trade your own money privately while being a quant? So I have a video on that. You can look it up. But in general, nope. A lot of firms have a lot of restrictions. So you can trade, but for example, there are restrictions on what asset classes you can or can't trade. So if you're working for a firm, I don't know, you have a massive impact to their equities division, you might not be able to trade equities, or you can trade equities, but you have to hold everything for a minimum of 30 days. So again, you're not going to be able to utilize their trading strategies in that way. Also, if somehow they find out you're using, their trading strategies, they can sue you. The other piece too is quants are really busy. Like guys, we're not just sitting at a computer like casually coding away and like life's all like fun and dandy. You're reading lots of documentations, you're doing a ton of research. People are, yelling and screaming, they need stuff all the time. And there are some quiet times, which is nice, but you're slammed. You're not going to have a lot of time to invest. So a lot of people ask, Dimitri, why don't you do quant finance if you're so smart? Like trade on your own. One, there are some restrictions on me, not very many since I work at a bank, and I'm not on that client-facing impact role. But also because I don't have the time. Like to successfully do it, you need a lot of time. And so I have to pick, do I want to do YouTube? Do I want to do my day job? Do I want to trade? Do I want to do quant stuff? Do I want to read? Do I want to research? Right? You have very limited time. So most situations, a lot of quants don't actually trade on their own. Again, they might if they go out on their own. They have the skills to do these, but you have to get a whole team behind you in a corporation and a business. Let's see what the other questions are. All right, so Tariq, I believe it's how you pronounce it. Probably off, but they ask, what is the most important thing you recommend new quant traders learn about risk and risk management? Okay, so I'm going to take this apart a little bit, which is why I'm picking this question. One, I don't think traders are quants. I'm sorry, right? People are going to get upset and yell and scream in the comments, but I don't think traders are quants. Being a trader requires really fast thinking skills. Being a quant requires really slow thinking and processing very complex problems over weeks or months. The skill sets are very different, so I don't think they're the same. For traders, though, my advice is actually go and learn risk management. So look at how models actually function and work behind the scenes and figure out why they will fail. Because a lot of times you'll use tools and think they work like magically in this one way, and then you don't understand it, like how it works. Again, you can say quant traders a lot of times will have quant-ish backgrounds, but even if you have like a MFE degree and you go out and you be a trader, you're not going to really understand a lot of what's going on. Just my perspective on this. The risk and risk management part, though, is something else I want to hit on and talk a little bit about. So risk management, people think there's like teams that are just like analyzing just the risk, and then like, I don't know, they do something magical and they monitor it, just necessarily just the risk. In a bank, we call risk management, that's your quant team. So we have developers, so not quant dev as people call them, the computer programming, people. We have actual model developers who actually build strategies and solve specific problems. So you're assigned a problem, you have to build a model. People are developing those. So pricing algorithms, for example, who's pricing loans, who's pricing derivatives, who's pricing all these different assets. We also have, again, so you do have some risk management practices baked into these. So you might have a value at risk model for a specific position and portfolio. This is equivalent to the same thing in credit risk as what we call expected loss. So given, your portfolio, your position, your strategies, and a bunch of information, which requires a whole bunch of models to do this. It's not just one model, it's a whole bunch of models. How do you price a loan and look at the expected loss? So how much are you going to lose from that? What's your risk baked into that? So risk management, I think, is more about actually just quant, just building models. I work in the validation side, so we actually look at the development process, how they built the model. The developers are required to explain to us how they're using the model, how the model is built. They also have to explain to us the weaknesses of the model, the limitations of the model, and then validation teams go back and actually nitpick and say, you missed this risk, you missed that risk. For example, we do like scenario stress testing. So if you want to see how robust a model is, this works for machine learning guys as well, which I don't see hardly anyone doing this. in textbooks or online or anything, but you can stress the parameters in the model. So imagine, I don't know, GDP, right? It's been behaving fairly well, let's say for the last, I don't know, a couple of years here. What happens if we go back through a 2007, 2008 financial crisis, right? What happened to GDP? How much did it drop by? You can plug that into your model if you have GDP in there and figure out where the drop's at. Like, how much is your model impacted? Some models will just explode and give you nonsensical results. So you have to think about that. You also have to think about the stress testing piece, which is hard, is how much do you stress it and how many variables are in that model? And should you stress them one by one to get an idea? And then you should also stress them, multiple groupings of them, or maybe all of them get stressed in different ways. Historic data is good, but not perfect. For example, looking at past crises and things, if we have data for that, plugging that in and seeing how things move in different directions, and then if those are in the model, seeing how they impact the model. So again, risk management, in my opinion, from a bank, is just what you're doing as a quant researcher or quant model developer at a hedge fund. But again, it's important to understand these. I don't see enough emphasis around risk management and common sense. So I would like to see more of that. I think the industry is changing, though, because there are a lot more quant jobs now on the banking side. And if you're international, guys, this is, I think, the biggest growing market for a lot of you, right? It doesn't matter if you go to Africa, if you go to India, if you go to China, you go Greece, Italy, UK, Brazil, Argentina, I know Sri Lanka, for example. It doesn't matter where you go. You're going to have banks, and banks are going to need to make loans. They're going to need to handle investments, for example. A lot of banks globally aren't doing the same practices we're doing in the US. So again, trying to raise those levels. Europe's doing a pretty good job now of doing similar things, but they have other issues I'm not going to go on about. Anyways, so I think a lot of quant jobs are going to be in that banking side. And a lot of people think, oh, it's not that exciting. I want to do the investments. I want to do the hedge funds. But the big banks and banks in your country, they need people to price loans, to do expected losses. Again, they might have some investments. So every bank's going to have some market risk as well. So you can do them on more fun, exciting, interest rates and whatever. So that's on there as well. But yeah, risk management's a big area. I think it's going to be starting to boom. If you're in another country, so this is going to be another point here. If you're in another country, let's say you're in a country and they don't have quant programs, and there's not really quant jobs there, but there is banking jobs. Self-learning could be a good option for you, right? So again, people hate me for saying World Quant, ranking them and saying it's not that great. But if you're in another country, World Quant is a free program online. They could provide you some insight. They can provide you some tools to kind of get going, some structure, some outlines. They can provide you some sort of a base. And then you can build on top of that by getting textbooks and going very rigorously down there. Even with the top financial engineering masters from the United States, you still need to learn a ton of information afterwards. Even with a PhD, you need to learn a ton of information afterwards. If you're dedicated and you really start working through it and you can get a job at one of these local banks, you might be able to do something really cool, impactful, and beneficial for them. So that helps the bank a lot, it helps your country a lot, and it helps you career-wise, because if you, let's say you build this amazing model and you show them how to manage the risks a little bit better, they could really look at it and go, wow, you're really helping us make better loans. And how, there's a whole process to this. You can help them get, more data. How do you track data? How do you build models? All these types of things. So you can make an impact where you're at. You don't necessarily need to come to the US, though if you want to make, decent living and do more advanced things, the United States is going to have it. But again, you guys can make an impact globally. So I hope you guys kind of have that as a takeaway here too. This is why my advice varies from person to person, right? Depending on your goals, if you want to stay in your country or not, depending which country you live in, depending what job you want, depending on your education, the opportunities available to you, all these things impact what you should and shouldn't be doing. Somebody asked here too, so Zach asked, is staying at the same school for your master's a negative? I would say yes. So the reason it doesn't look good is typically schools specialize and have good academic professors in one area that's kind of their target. And then different people at different schools will have different specialties and different kind of topics that they're better at. If you go to an undergrad school in one area, I think it's best to go to a different one because you can learn different perspectives and different information. So especially when it comes to things like economics. But again, if you're doing even stats, right, some program might be stellar at biostatistics and you've learned a lot of information and they tailor it more towards that industry. And then you might switch somewhere else that focuses more on, let's say, like machine learning or more on like time series or something different. And so going to different schools can be beneficial. Let's just go down the list here and answer more questions. Tobias asked, what are exit opportunities as a quant? Can you easily switch to a different career? For example, software developer, data science, investment banking, etc. Yes, yeah, you can. But it depends on your personal skill set and how you market and brand yourself. So just as an example here, I've worked in quant finance now for, I don't know, 6-7 years, something like that. I have had opportunities to go work for one of the biggest tech firms out there. So if I said the name, you would all know who it is. So that is available. Again, though, they were looking for someone to run and manage a data science team and machine learning team. So my background is stats, and I can easily do machine learning. I do it my day job now. So my education, my experience all lines up for that position. Let's say you're working in implementation at a hedge fund. So implementation is taking math models and then optimizing them into, like, for example, like C code or C# or C++ a lot of times, and then running that sort of code, maybe Java. But anyways, you're going to be running that code and optimizing it, right? If you want to be a computer scientist at like Google, for example, or a tech firm, or like, I don't know, another industry, they'll hire you because you have those skill sets, but you have to write the resume to show them that you do have the same skills that they're looking for. So it is possible to switch out of the career. Investment banking, though, that's a challenging one. Investment banking as a whole is very who do you know kind of oriented a lot of times. And so I'm not a fan of this in general. So you might have to go back to school and get like a fancy MBA from a fancy school that's a target school of all that. But again, there's some careers that are easier to switch into, like software development, depending on your skills. Some like data science are better if you have that background. Let me just jump ahead here and grab some other questions here. Let's see. Have American firms heard of Imperial College London? Yes. Yes, we know who that is. Again, we don't hire a lot of times from abroad just because there's so much talent here. If you want to transfer over, though, one of the easy ways to do it is work for a big global firm. So work for, I don't want to throw any names out, but work for a big global firm, and then you can transfer to the U.S. office. That's an easy way to get across the pond. Let's see. What is your opinion on technical analysis? I'm going to do a video on this, guys. So the way I view technical analysis is different than I review quantitative finance. It comes down to technical analysis is a lot of times looking like at Bollinger Bands and looking at moving averages, and like there's not a lot of statistics and testing behind it, but you can take those ideas and concepts, right, which are actually statistical concepts, which is kind of where they came from, and you can do actual hypothesis testing on these, and you can actually build models. So we do build models with technical aspects, and they're statistical models, machine learning models, for example. But I don't view it as technical analysis. I did technical analysis in undergrad in a finance degree, and you don't need really any deep understanding. It's like, oh, this has momentum kind of, and you can plot stuff out. But actually testing these things is important. So I will make a video in more depth on that, but technical analysis I don't see as a very positive word because a lot of it's been done so poorly. I think quant finance takes technical analysis to a scientific level and does some academic rigor to it, and you actually use scientific methods to do actual research. So I'll throw that in there as well. Let's see. What is your opinion on the application of network theory and systemic risk modeling? Is there any? It feels like there's a lot of stylized solutions, but the idea is interesting. So I don't necessarily work in network theory. Again, if you work more on the trading side, it probably has more applications than working on the banking side. There are some papers out there. There are some things you can look at, you can research. So there's promise there, guys. So another hard question I get, which maybe is in this comment somewhere, people always ask, Dimitri, I'm doing a master's, I'm doing a PhD, and I need a research topic. It's a very, very personal question. It's not as if like this is the booming topic, and if you write a paper on this, like everyone's going to love you. Even if it's a booming topic and you write a paper and it's not very good, so a master's thesis is probably not going to be very good because you don't have enough time to research things. You'll be like ostracized as like a moron because it just doesn't have the rigor. You don't have the time. But I would consider you guys, if you're doing a PhD or a master's thesis, find something that really interests you because you need to spend a lot of time on it. And this is a good example. If you have network theory as something that's interesting, right, and you find it interesting, dive deep on it, look for data, try to do some research and some applications, and see how it works on actual industry data. So finding good topics is important, but also finding something that you're passionate about will be more important more often for research. So it says MFE versus PhD. Do PhDs still get hired at the same position as MFE grads? So this is asked from Sid. Yes, PhDs and MFEs typically start at the same position. So I had some experience recently. Some firms prefer MFEs. They think they're more applied. They learn more detailed materials, and that's fine. So they'll hire more of them. Other places, for example, a lot of banks, so like where I work, we prefer PhDs. So you're all competing for the same job and the same title. Depending on where you're at, depending on the firm, that will make an impact. So is one better than the other? I don't know. It's hard to say yes or no. An MFE a lot of times is more focused on a very specific application. I think a PhD is better, but I don't think it's necessarily the best and doesn't make you like a genius because you have a PhD. So think about that. I don't know. Take it or leave it for what you want. But yeah, they get hired for the same position. You'll get paid the same amount. There's this very misleading concept on Reddit and Quora and a bunch of these nonsensical things that PhDs come out making like a ton of money and MFE students come out making like these little tiny scraps, and that's why people like me talk about it. As someone who actually hires PhDs, I'll tell you. So I've been in the hiring process. I'm not the hiring manager, but I've been in the process. I've seen PhDs hired at many firms. They make the same amount as everybody else with an MFE. So it's not as if that's how it works. Let's see. Trying to find a good question here. Let's answer this one. What masters most to get hired as quant? Your skill or a big university name on your resume? I mean, the truthful answer to this is both. I know you don't want to hear that. But you guys got to realize too, when we hire, right, I can pick from anybody, right? Everyone wants to work in quant finance. So it's really easy to pick people. Also for these top quant programs that are like well-rated programs, they're pulling the best of the best students globally. So those are the best GREs, the best GPAs, the most experience that they have in you, though a lot of programs don't really care about that. So, I mean, it depends on the firm. Big names are important somewhat, but location I think is even more important. So for example, I live and work in Dallas, Texas. I would love to bring in students from other parts of the US, from better universities a lot of times. But a lot of times we get these relationships built with local Texas schools. And so a lot of times you'll see schools that are not necessarily the best nationally or globally ranked. And we still hire from them because we find like niche pockets, like, I don't know, maybe this stats department's amazing, or maybe this, PhD program and, computational finance is amazing. And so we'll actually get feeders and bring people in locally. So name plays some part of it, but it doesn't actually play like the biggest part. Skills are going to be crucial. Skills are more important though for success. So like real success here. So if you want to jump through your career quickly, right? You want to make more and more money and have more responsibility. Skills are going to be where it's at. Networking as well. So soft skills and quant skills. But that's going to be super important here. Let's see. So any thoughts on high performance computing and quant finance? So yeah, this is I'll talk about this a little bit here. So one thing that just irritates me to no end, I guess it's not the best way to start off with this, but is that I always hear people say that work on the trading side and the finance side that we don't work in high frequency trading, so we don't need high performance computing. This is complete crap. I'm just going to let you know this up front. Yeah, for high frequency trading, you need high performance. I work on credit risk, so people think like credit risk is like boring and slow and nothing's going on. We have huge, massive data sets, like over 100 gigabytes of data sets. 10, 15 million records sometimes. When we're processing 10 to 15 million records in a model, it's going to take forever to build these things and to test them. So a lot of times you have to make workarounds and work on smaller sets of data. That's important. The other piece too, though, is we have to have servers and we have to have high performance to even process these things. So high performance is needed across the field. This is, again, where you need IT staff and computer scientists and experts I've done some of this assisting at some of the banks I've worked at and helping them figure out what hardware you need. So yes, the hardware makes a massive impact on what you're doing. So you wouldn't go out and buy a high performance, I don't know, computing system for a dinky small hedge fund who's processing time series data and isn't really doing high frequency trading. It just doesn't make sense. But if you're at a massive bank doing credit risk or you're at a high frequency trading firm, speed is going to be crucial. And I think this is important here. So imagine you guys go out and you go, I don't know, you want like a credit card, right? So you pull out your credit card. You apply online for this credit card, right? You want an answer instantly, right? You don't want to apply for the credit card and then wait like a week or a month, right? That's not good customer service. And most of us are needing a credit card when we apply for it, right? So these models, again, have to run in real time and process all these transactions as well. So we have high performance, if you want to call it, servers set up to actually process all of these. So imagine how many requests a credit card company gets. It's a ton. So on the credit side, you need high performance computing. So again, you need computer scientists to do this. You can't just use generic quants or quants specialized in research to work on the hardware side and to work on the high performance side. For implementation teams, you want a computer scientist, not a quant, because computer scientists can implement that code very efficiently with the given hardware you have. So again, this is something else most quants don't understand. So you'll get nonsensical views from this. Computer scientists are very valuable. So just want you guys to know that. They have their own role and their own part in the community, and they make a lot. So anyways, just an example on this. Python used to run very efficiently on Intel servers and processors, so the processing piece. AMD has amazing products as well, and I actually talked to a representative at AMD who reached out and wanted to learn more about quant finance. And they were talking about an example of this where it was like Python was set up to optimize on Intel processors, but not on AMD processors, okay? They've changed that since, but what would happen is you'd run the same code in Python on both, and Intel would perform amazing. It'd be off the charts, stellar, this is the best processor ever, you should buy, just the way that the processor is set up and how it processes the information on the chip. Again, you're gonna have to get into like parallel processing and everything else to make these kind of things work. But then on AMD, right, they had this issue where Python wasn't set up and designed and the packages weren't optimized to run on AMD because AMD's architecture works differently. So again, you can get a degree on chip engineering and doing processors. So high performance computing is extremely important in many areas of quant finance, even on like the so-called boring, traditional banking side. It's not just high frequency trading, but it is definitely a big thing to look at. When I was in grad school, we actually had access to a supercomputer, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, those are kind of things to think about. People are asking about specific programs. I'm not going to weigh in on them. Okay, this is something else I wanted to talk about. So, Tumaricido, I'm sorry, I've butchered your name here. They said, I totally missed the stream. Is it possible to review a master's or get a list of what master's did you reviewed? I have not reviewed any masters on here. I'm not going to review them. But please, if you guys have a program that you think is good or you're curious about, put it in the comments here. So go ahead and type them all out. I'm going to, again, I have to do this review as I mentioned. I'm going to try to do an honorable mentions list. Being from America, I don't really know different programs in Europe. So or South America, or Africa, or Middle East, or wherever you're coming from, Asia and everywhere. So list them below, and I will consider going through some of these. Right, I have a limited amount of time to look at programs and to create this honorable mentions list, but I will look at them if you guys put them below. I will actually consider, looking at these programs and then weeding them out and selecting kind of the final few here. So don't worry about that. All right. Javier asked here, do you use SAS to extract and manipulate the data sets? In banking, yes. We use SAS a lot. It is the main backbone, the main software I use. I like SAS in many ways. For time series, it's hands down the best software out there. So if you're doing that. For extraction and manipulation, we do use SAS, but we also use SQL. So the way companies are set up these days, you'll have like a massive server or a couple servers or whatever, and you're going to be pulling usually data from like databases, like SQL servers. And so you need to use SQL to pull it in. You can use proc SQL, so inside of SAS, and you can connect to your servers and pull data in. I like SQL as well. There are a lot of, it's quick and easy a lot of times to get what you want with SQL. So we will use proc SQL inside of SAS, but I also do a lot of manipulations using traditional SAS code instead of data sets. So yeah, that's possible. All right, so Asterix is asking, they don't have an actual name on here. Are the CFAs a waste of time for an engineer trying to be a quant? And that's a challenging question. And I'll explain why. So if you work on the investing side and you want to work on the investing side, it's important to know traditional finance. A lot of firms, even quant firms, will want you to have a CFA just because you understand financial markets and traditional investing and accounting. So yes, we can use accounting data that's publicly available to build quantitative models. It is helpful if you want to work on the investing side. I work on the banking side. So again, having some finance knowledge is always helpful in all quant finance. But we don't care about the CFA. We don't use the CFA. If you're working in super quantitative research, for example, a lot of times, I don't know, it's not super helpful. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not going to get one, right? I don't have one. I'm not going to go get one. I'm not a big fan of designations in general. But you can learn a lot of that other stuff as well that you would need. It might give you an edge if you're looking to do an actual CFA, like an actual investing job. It'll open up opportunities as well in traditional finance jobs. So it does help a little. The CFA, I think, is probably the best designation, though, in general, just because it opens a lot more opportunities than other designations. So I would consider it, but it's up to you whether you want to spend the time to do that or not. Okay, Alex asks, hey, I don't have any specific ones that I would recommend. I don't know. So it depends on your background and whatnot. If you want specifics and you want to give me more information, you can message me on LinkedIn. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, get one. You're going to need it as a quant. Message me and I can answer that question. And that leads me to another topic here. So a few more things. Somebody asked before, I don't take a lot of personal meetings a lot of times, like video chats, just because of my time constraints and about a bunch of other things. But they asked, if I compensated you in some way, would you be more likely to take a call? The answer is yes, I would be more likely to take a call. I have mixed feelings about it because I understand as a college student, so being a college student before, I was poor, I didn't have a lot of money, but I have been starting to take more calls, but I do ask, or will be asking at least of people, if you will consider making a donation. So at the very top of all these comments, I put some links. I have something called Ko-Fi, which is where you can buy me a coffee. You can just buy a coffee and hit the link quickly, and it's $3. If you find the advice more helpful or beneficial, I would encourage you to offer maybe more like, I don't know, $15, $20, $25, depending on what you like. Another way to give back is also to do buy merchandise. So I get a little bit of profit from the merchandise. You can get something cool, like my awesome mug here, or a hoodie, or a, I don't know, t-shirt or whatnot. We sell a bunch of stuff on there. Even if you want to do something nice, but you don't want to pay money, a huge thing you can do is if you go on LinkedIn, so you have a LinkedIn account, and you just share, my favorite video from Dimitri Bianco, but you write something up like, I found this amazing video on quant career paths. I found it really helpful because of these reasons. And then tag me in it. So add me on LinkedIn and then tag me. A bunch of my connections and a bunch of your connections will see it. It helps grow the channel, so it's giving back as well. That's that. Somebody else asked before if I'm going to do a Discord group. I am not involved in Discord for a variety of reasons. If you want to chat with other people that are in these video things, right, I would recommend you go to Facebook. I have a Fancy Quant Facebook page. There's a link in the top, if you go all the way to the beginning of the comments as well. There's a Fancy Quant discussion there. So something else to think about. So we've been going for an hour 3, it looks like, hour 4. I'm going to take a few more questions here, and then we'll wrap this one up. But we will do more of these live streams, so please, no worries here. So thanks for answering my question. No problem. Happy to help. Let's see. Okay, people want to know about internships. These are really, really challenging, and I'll explain why. So James is asking, Dimitri, I have the option to do a year-long internship between the second and third year of my BS. Would you recommend doing the internship? And if yes, what type of positions would you recommend? So this varies country to country. I think internships are very beneficial in general because you get real-world hands-on experience. Would I take a full year off? I don't know. Like in the United States, if you're going to school here, I don't think I would. I think I would just continue going on with the undergrad and then working on trying to get like a 3-month summer internship. Just my opinion. Finding internships, guys, is super, super hard. If you're an undergrad, you're not going to be getting quant internships a lot of times. Good alternatives for that is going to be getting like a statistics or an analytical internship. So look at even like tech. Like, guys, these are applicable skills across industries. Look for like machine learning and data science ones. Look for statistics and data analytics ones. Those are going to be very important. Internships are nice to have when you get into your master's or PhD level. You can do internships. You can do quant internships a lot of times. So banks and hedge funds will hire them. They're good to have, but they're not a deal breaker. Okay, so I didn't have an internship. So I have a whole podcast season coming out. I'm excited to release here as well about my whole business experience, my whole career before quant finance. I had all that experience, but no one cared about that. But I actually worked and did all that beforehand. I never had a quant internship. No one valued my actual experience in my past life as beneficial. Don't think it's the end of the world if you don't have an internship. Like, you'll survive. But it's good to have. It's nice to see how the world works and kind of work with other quants and build relationships. So, anyways, I'm just going to wrap that up here. Let's see, maybe one more. Somebody else, okay, Sid's asking, this is an important question. Age factor. Do people in the early 30s have less chance of getting hired? No, I don't think so. So quants is a really weird, unique environment because you have master students, which are going to be typically 22 coming out, starting their careers. You also have PhDs, which are going to be probably about 25 to 27. And then we don't really care about weird things like age for most quants, to be honest. Like, we're just excited to look at someone who's really smart and has a graduate degree. So even if you graduated, say, like at 35 with a PhD or a master's, we're still excited to talk to you and see what skills you have and how you can help us drive quants, quant work and research. So I don't think age is a big factor, at least not in the US. Maybe it's different in other countries. But anyways, thank you guys. Thank you, everybody. I could definitely go on because there's so many questions on here. I could go on for a few more hours. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this channel. If you want to connect with me, add me on LinkedIn. If you want to have a group chat, I also check the Fancy Quant Facebook page as well, which I haven't mentioned a lot about. We will be doing some big projects and things coming up here. So like the Udemy course is kind of in the works. The Quant honorable mentions kind of list is in the works here. Things are going to be, moving forward with the channel. We're going to be doing some big things. The podcast season is coming out. So again, the podcast seasons are not necessarily quant focused. I have some amazing guests that are going to be coming on soon. And then I have a big break for the whole podcast season, talking about my whole business experience and everything else. But anyways, thank you guys as always. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on the channel. If you had fun, you found it beneficial, message me, let me know. Donate to Ko-Fi or something else. But anyways, thank you guys. And as always, until next time.